We got everybody? This is, yes, I've got that information. Councillor Elliott's online, Councillor Robinson's online. And Okay, councillors, I'll open the public voice committee meeting at 6:06. That's being held in the City of Newcastle Council Chamber and also held concurrently remotely via Zoom. Noting that, as with all council meetings, this meeting is live streamed and accessible on council's website. Those present in the chamber, please stand for the Indigenous acknowledgement and the prayer. Newcastle City Council acknowledges that we are meeting on the traditional country of the Awabakala peoples. We recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs, and continuing relationship with the land, and they are the proud survivors of more than 200 years of dispossession. Council reiterates its commitment to address disadvantages and attain justice for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples of this community. Please remain standing for the prayer. Almighty God, we humbly ask you to bless this meeting, direct and prosper our deliberations, for the advancement of your glory and the true welfare of the people of Newcastle. Ladies and gentlemen, will you remain standing to honour the memory of those who served and died, that we might meet here in peace? Thank you, councillors. Councillors, I have a request for an apology and leave of absence from Councillor Church, Councillor Rufo and Councillor Dunn. Do I have a resolution? Moved by Councillor Henshaw, seconder. Councillor Duncan, thank you. All those in favour, please raise your hand. All those against, I declare that motion carried. Do I have any declarations of pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest? If not, we'll get on with our first public voice, which is DA 2020/00158, 54 Regent Street, New Lambton, infrastructure installations for telecommunications facility and equipment. So I'll just request, they're presenting obviously via Zoom this evening, for council services to admit the speakers for the first item. And I'll just give them a moment to do so we can welcome them. I believe that Council Services has ensured that we have our speakers. I'd just like to welcome Katie and Tanya, who will be speaking first and also have a PowerPoint presentation as the objectives to this public voice item, and that will be for 10 minutes. And then following their presentation, I will welcome Phil Hull from Telstra Corporation, who will be giving a verbal presentation. And at the conclusion of both presentations will be an opportunity for councillors to ask questions. So I'd also just ask Councillor Services when our presenters, Katie and Tanya, request, it would be good to share their presentations on the screen. So both the councillors here in chambers and the two councillors online can also see them. So I'll hand over to Katie and Tanya whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Lord Mayor and councillors. Could we have the next slide, please? That's just gone to the last slide there. And one more back if we could, please. Oh, I'm not sure what's happening. I'll just go ahead. I'm representing the residents of New Lambton who have objected to the revised development application for the proposed telecommunications facility in Regent Street, New Lambton. The height has been reduced to 26.3 metres. However, this has done nothing to alleviate our concerns, as reflected by the well over 100 objections that have been lodged for the revised application. We believe that Cordia has failed to address Council's requests for further information and that Council should reject the amended application. We would like to state that we are not against the rollout of 5G technology. Next slide, please. Capacity and site selection. The amended DA once again continually stresses that the proposal is an upgrade to an existing site. It is not. It is a brand new structure, 26.3 metres high, located in the heart of New Lambton Village. No information has been provided to show existing coverage or to demonstrate mobile congestion in the area, or to show potential coverage if the existing infrastructure on the building was actually upgraded. Next slide, please. Co-location has only been considered with 2 nearby Optus sites. No consideration has been given to the feasibility of co-location with the Optus and Vodafone Tower, which has already been approved by Council on Queen's Road and Mahogany Drive. This was specifically requested by Council at the last public voice. No consideration has been given to the investigation of alternate technologies or to collate with or upgrade nearby Telstra sites, such as in Lambton Park. Next slide, please. Lowering the height of the proposed tower does nothing to alleviate its visual impact in the heart of New Lambton Village or to meet the height limit in the Newcastle LEP. The assessment provided by GHD in the development application actually shows the proposed tower will be visible from Nobbies, yet Cordia contend there will be no visual impact in New Lambton. Cordia have stated that the current New Lambton streetscape has little design merit. So the 26.3 metre pole will not detract from the visual impact which currently exists. This, quite frankly, is offensive. Once again, the photos provided have been strategically taken to support Cordia's view. They have been positioned directly in front of power poles and trees, so as to obscure the true visual impact of the proposed tower. Next slide, please. The photos on the right in this and the next slide are taken metres away from those provided in the revised photo montage in the DA. Next slide, please. These photos clearly show that those provided in the revised DA are not a true representation of New Lambton's streetscape or vistas. Next slide, please. Cordia and Telstra have not considered the social impact to the community in this proposal at all. They are simply looking to pursue the cheapest option to benefit Telstra. Telstra's media announcement last week to allow greater commercial use of its tower assets is for residents quite concerning. If the proposed DA is approved, Telstra can add more infrastructure to the tower to financially benefit themselves. This will be to the detriment of the New Lambton community. The approval of this proposed DA will set a precedent for other areas in Newcastle and will also blatantly contradict Council's agenda to beautify and improve local village areas, such as the recent plan for New Lambton's Blackbutt Village. Next slide, please, and over to Katie.
Unmute. So no consideration has been given to the proximity of New Lambton Public School in this in the new DA. School Infrastructure New South Wales, in conjunction with the Department of Education, adopts a policy of prudent avoidance by not endorsing installation of mobile telecommunication facilities on or near school property. And while they can't state a specific distance between schools, they ask for at least 500 metres distance between mobile telecommunication towers and schools. And the school is currently within 100, probably within 50 metres of proposed facility. And it's not just New South Wales Department of Education who objects to this. The Queensland Department of Education also adopts the strategy of risk avoidance and asks that mobile telecommunication facilities are placed at least 200 metres away from schools. Next slide, please. So the Telecommunications Act 1997 from the Commonwealth states that in order to comply with the industry code, C564/2004, deployment of mobile phone network infrastructure, They must identify and consult with community-sensitive locations, which includes schools, about the proposed site. Next slide, please. So while it's been superseded by C564 2008 mobile phone base station deployment industry code, it still states that they must ensure in their written procedures for site selection that they have regard to the likelihood of the area being a community sensitive location, which includes close proximity to schools, aged care centres, residential areas and childcare centres, all of which are within the heart of our New Lambton village. And it also says that they have the regard to the objective of avoiding community sensitive locations, which has not been considered at all in this proposal. Next slide. So in conclusion, we state that the revised EA, it's not adequately answered the questions asked by council. It's not adequately addressed any of the concerns issued by the residents. It doesn't take into account the proximity to community sensitive locations such as the school and residential areas. The Department of Education objects to having the tower placed so close to its own property. Telstra is servicing their own interests, and we would ask that council act in the best interests of the residents of New Lambton and its greater community and reject the proposal as amended. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie and Tanya. I will hand straight over to the DA applicant, Phil Hull, for his verbal presentation. I just need to make sure that he is in the meeting. I just can't see him on our screen, but it's likely it's on the next screen over.
I've unmuted myself, but I can't unvideo myself.
Oh, welcome, Phil.
Host,
Certainly.
the host
Okay.
has stopped me. Okay, I'm not worried either way. It doesn't really matter. You'll only see me in my bedroom. It's up to you.
Okay. Well, go ahead.
You cannot start now. You've let me in. That's fine. Good evening, Lord Mayor. Good evening, councillors. Good evening, local residents. We really kind of returned to where we left off last time, except for an update. I haven't done a presentation. Can I turn everybody's attention to? I suppose it's not an agenda. It's the paper, which is presented for this evening's meeting. Now, I actually think if you actually go through the paper, it chronicles the history of the application. It chronicles the additional information that was requested by council, and I think obviously it's not for a committee for determination, but it does outline the planning officer's consideration of the additional information that has been put forward. That's amplified if you go to the background papers, which are on the council's website, and there's a few documents in there that I'd refer you to. Firstly, the New Lambton Visual Impact Assessment, which has been referred to by local residents. Secondly, a number of coverage maps of the area, and they're all picked up again in the document, the presentation document for this evening, by the planning officer. And I think probably lastly, there's one more document which is on the council's website. Yes, so it's the request for further information and my response to those questions. Now, I had understood that I'd actually dealt with all of those points. There seems to be some query that not absolutely everything was dealt with, but I believe that by and large, the points which were made in the request for additional information have been covered there. I am quite happy to take any questions or clarification points that if anybody thinks anything's been omitted. I will say there are a couple of points which I think have been very important. Firstly, that Telstra have listened very carefully to representations made by local residents, and notwithstanding the concern of local residents that a reduction in height was insufficient, they have in fact proposed and indeed amended the application by lowering the height. Secondly, now I don't know if this has got through to everybody, I did put it through to council today, some additional communications. One is actually a media release from the Honourable Paul Fletcher, Now, I don't know whether that got through to councillors or got through to objectors. I'm sure it can be made available by council. This really reflects the importance of telecommunications in our present difficult environment. In particular, the media release by the Minister for Communications states that telecommunications services are essential to keeping Australians connected to friends, family, and essential services, and he goes on various other points. So I think the additional point, I mean, why are we here doing this evening on a Zoom conference rather than being together because of COVID? What's the effect of COVID on our day-to-day working practices? I'm working from home. I'm in my bedroom at the moment. My wife is actually teaching on Zoom in our living room at the moment. We're using our mobile phones for the purposes of work, which was never envisaged. So the intensity of use is quite marked. The second document which I've referred council to, I recently had to do a Zoom attendance, a panel meeting with Wollongong Council. As councillors may be aware, a number of councils around Greater Sydney, development applications are determined by planning panels. That particular planning panel actually, in recommending approval in their conclusions, stated that the proposal provides essential communications infrastructure. Now, I've added those two today in light of comments that I read from one of the objectors today about the importance of social infrastructure. Just to add that in the present COVID environment, telecommunications are almost now seen to be essential for our day-to-day living. So I won't add any more than that. I think everything's already more or less covered in the report. Quite happy to amplify, quite happy to explain further in response to any objections, but I think the report and my responses to council actually cover all the points that have been raised.
Thank you for your presentation, Phil. What I will do is make sure that we have both our objectors and our proponent available, all on Zoom, and I will open it up to questions from councillors, obviously both in chambers and via Zoom. So just let me know if you have a question for our presenters, councillors. Councillor Byrne.
Thank you. My question is for, I think, the second presenter, Katie. If you can hear me okay, Katie?
Yes, I can.
In one of the slides, and I forget which one it was, you referred to a policy directive and it was commencing with the letter C. I'm just wanting to know, is that applicable to New South Wales jurisdiction, or was that something from the Queensland Department of Education? I couldn't work out.
It was linked from the Queensland Department of Education, but it is the Australian standard.
I got that.
Yeah,
Thank you, Katie.
It's an Australian industry code.
Lovely,
and
thank you.
And there's hyperlinks in all of the slides that you can go and have a look yourself.
Yeah. And can I ask another question, Lord Mayor? Is that all right? Phil, my question is to you. I don't think, and you heard the objectors' presentation, that they are not against 5G networks per se. It's more in regards to the location, or the specific location in Regent Street. Can you appreciate that something like this is in actual fact an eyesore? And I'm just wondering what considerations have been given to alternate venues in relation to constructing this tower.
Yeah, can I turn you to I call it an agenda. It's not agenda, it's a background paper, it's not. If you look at the background paper to this evening's meeting, and I'll ask you to turn to page, sorry, I thought it was in here. Yes, it is. If you turn to page 14, page 15, these are in, I've copied it in black and white. So what it shows on page 14 is Can I clarify this point? There is an existing mobile base station at the Telstra Exchange. Existing Telstra customers in the area are receiving their mobile phone coverage.
It's very quiet.
Can you hear me? Sorry. Can you hear me okay?
Oh yes,
Yeah.
we can hear you well in Chambers.
I don't have the best internet coverage in my back bedroom, but I'll try my best. I'll speak a bit louder. Can you hear me okay? Sorry.
Yes, we can definitely hear you, Phil. Can you hear
okay.
me? It's
yeah,
Newcastle.
I can indeed. Shall I start that again? That
Well,
point? Did you catch?
I believe it was captured in Chambers, but I'm very happy for you to start it again.
I'll do it quickly again. So if I can turn everybody to page 14. So the point that I have made earlier is there is already an existing mobile phone base station at the Telstra Exchange. It exists already. That's shown on the map on page 14, existing coverage. The proposed coverage area is actually no bigger, which is on the following page 15. However, it's designed to cover for greater intensity of usage. Now, when a mobile phone is being used to make a phone call, that's actually not too much. It's downloading data. So when everybody in that area is trying to use their mobile phone at the same time to download data, it puts an enormous strain. So the intensification, the going from 3G to 4G to 5G is all about improving existing coverage, both on the council's website. Sorry, I downloaded all this in the office and brought it home. So if you look on the council's website, there are additional maps, and I can't remember what they're called, showing where alternative coverage could be provided from co-locating on one of the nearby Optus base stations. And it demonstrates that actually wouldn't achieve anything, that the residents of New Lambton would have no coverage from Telstra at all. I think I may have explained it before, that the way it's a cell net, the way mobile phones work is you receive your signal from one particular base station, and as you move around the area, it actually picks up a signal from a different base station. So the objective that Telstra have is it's a bit like a jigsaw puzzle, so that you can actually receive continuous coverage as you're moving around an area. So the importance of the base location is it is there already. You're getting a service from it already, albeit inadequate, certainly in the present climate and in the future. And Telstra need to improve that coverage, upgrade their technologies. Maybe I slightly digressed off the question.
Oh, thank you, Phil.
Sorry, Councillor.
That was Councillor Byrne's question, but I think that covered. I think that covered
Councillor
answer. Sorry, I think that covered.
I mean, if Councillor Burns, obviously at your discretion. Hopefully, Councillor Byrne, I answered your points. Sorry.
Phil, that would be yes.
Kind of. I'm wondering how, Phil, you reconcile the Department of Education's 500-metre distance from the school with this proposed tower location, because it's clearly, within that 500-metre radius.
Right. I'm going to count. I'm sounding a bit boring because I keep going back to there is already a base station there. This is not a new base station. This is just the intensification of use, albeit that local residents or some local residents consider the visual impact of that unacceptable, but that's a matter for the development application to determine. There is no planning guidance on this matter. Planning guidance is covered by the Planning Act, and when your planning officer puts their report to council for consideration, they can only refer to planning guidance. There is reference to the Telecommunications Act, which is federal legislation. All other references will actually be to the Newcastle Local Environmental Plan, the Newcastle Development Control Plan, because those are the appropriate planning documents which council and councillors need to consider. There are no references in planning documents. I mean, council are familiar, obviously, when you're dealing with development applications, of when the planning officer is putting forward a report to you, they make reference. It's actually in the committee report, isn't it? Let's just go back to it.
Thanks, Phil. I think that might cover that point.
Yeah, that has actually no statutory planning basis. It may be guidance for new base stations where none currently exist from the Department of Education. Can I just add, of course, we're mindful there's a school next door. We've been mindful throughout. The school has been consulted. There is no issue about that. If you're actually standing, I mean, no doubt councillors have been to look at the site. If you're standing in front of the school looking across the road at the existing telecommunications exchange, the first thing you'll see is antennas facing the school. They are there already. One of the effects, actually, if you look at the EME report, which is in the document, one of the effects of raising the height of the antennas is that the EME levels at the school will actually decrease considerably. So currently the EME, got the copy of the EME report, which is actually in council's document background papers. And I think the explanation is also given in the officer's report about the effect of EME and distance from the base station, but I also make reference to the height. So the EME report, the current level is 5.94%, and with the go down to 3.18%. So there's actually a benefit in terms of any supposed health concerns by raising the height of the pole, because that's the way it works. The area with the lowest level of EME is right underneath the pole. And as the pole gets taller, those levels actually decrease. So I tried to pick up on the school point and the health points at the same time there. When I think, Councillor Byrne, that's when we're considering its impact in a local area. Now, nobody is denying that this is not a suburban area. There's an intensity of suburban uses. There are commercial uses. There are restaurants. There's a post office. There's a school. People are living in the area, but in that same area, people also want the benefit of improved telecommunications technology, precisely for the reasons I said earlier, to actually go about their normal day-to-day lives at the moment. So hopefully I picked up the rest of your points there, but sorry, Councillor Byrne. Apologies if I haven't covered all of them adequately, but hopefully I picked most of them up.
Thank you, Phil.
Is there any further questions from councillors? Councillor Winnie Barts.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I don't know whether this can be addressed tonight or whether it can just come to us as part of the report. The papers that I've got in front of me refer to investigation of co-location at Lookout Road. The objectors have raised Mahogany Drive. Are they two separate Optus towers in two separate locations? And is it possible to have a list of co-location potential sites included? You know, because what I'm seeing before me is a statement that says co-location within the suburb of New Lambton, including the Optus Tower at Lookout Road, were investigated and not feasible. But just perhaps some more information around that. And also the objectors raised the point that the Department of Education and the school, I believe, have submitted objections to this. Are they two separate objections? Is that the case?
Sorry, Councillor Barts, who's that aimed at?
Probably Miss Bisson.
Thank you, Miss Bisson.
Through you, Lord Mayor, my understanding is that the Optus Tower is one of the same. However, with regard to the second question, what was the objections? I'm not sure. We'd have to clarify that in the report. As also with regard to your previous inquiry about what other towers are around, I would have to take that on notice and make sure we address it in the report.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there any further questions for either of our three presenters? I'll just check, make sure the councillors that are online haven't requested a question. Is that a question, Councillor Robinson? I could see a hand moving. Hard to know. No question. No shaking. Certainly. So if there's no further questions, I would maybe just ask if the report could contain an explanation of why the extra height is possibly needed in terms of the technology to increase the intensity of usage, because it's not increasing the area of coverage, and why that requires extra height rather than just the height that's there, given the technology is not expanding the footprint of the coverage as per the description in those maps. But I'll just happy to put that through as something that's covered in a report back to us. If there's no further questions, I would just like to thank all our presenters, Katie, Tanya, as well as Phil, for your time this evening. It's the second time we've all been together to discuss this issue, and we recognise it as an important issue for both the proponent as well as members of the local community in New Lambton. And we look forward to receiving a final report here as councillors. So thank you again for your time. We do appreciate it. In doing that, we have a second public voice item before this meeting is finished, and that is the reclassification and rezoning of 233 Wharf Road, Newcastle, the Boat Harbour car park. We have Brian Ladd presenting as an objector to the reclassification and rezoning of the car park. And we also have Patricia McCarthy, our urban planning section manager, via Zoom, as well as Daniel Starveld, our senior urban planner, via Zoom, who also have a PowerPoint presentation on this topic. So I will just ask that Councillor Services admit those speakers, and I can see on my screen we have Brian. Hello, Brian.
Hello.
And nice to see you. And we also have both our senior urban planners online, Daniel and Patricia. What I will do is just note that the process will be Brian presenting for 10 minutes, and Councillor Services will be sharing the PowerPoint to all of us here in Chambers as well as via Zoom. And then we will have Patricia and Daniel presenting for 10 minutes. And then I will open it up to questions from councillors. So I will hand over to Brian, and you may start whenever you are ready.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. And good evening, councillors. And thank you all for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the Newcastle Inner City Residents Alliance, which is also known as NICRA. NICRA supports positive and appropriate urban renewal in Newcastle's historic CBD, of which the Boat Harbour car park and the adjoining former rail corridor allotment that you're looking at tonight are part. NICRA has concerns about the foreshadowed closure of the Boat Harbour car park and proposed rezoning of the car park, as well as the adjoining rail corridor land being rezoned from RE1 Community Park to SP3 Business Operational. And I wonder if the IT support can put up the one image that I have, which just helps us focus on the part of the Newcastle foreshore where these two allotments are actually sited. They're just west of Queen's Wharf, and the building that you see nearby, I think, belongs to Scratchley's. At least Scratchley's is part of it. Let me say that NICRA believes that the planned rezoning would forego potentially better outcomes for these uniquely sited adjoining properties along Wharf Road in Newcastle. We think that there are really two very good options that we would ask council to consider. We'd like to see, first of all, a long-term option, a long-term planning option that sees the two properties incorporated into the Harbour Foreshore Park as its western extension. When the park opened in 1988, it was roughly 11 hectares and it was bordering the CBD, harbour beaches, and many significant sites, including Fort Scratchley's, the Convict Lumberyard, Customs House, and the railway station itself in Newcastle. Foreshore Park is a huge asset for the city. It mostly sits on reclaimed land used for mining, shipping. It had a power station, bond stores, and rail marshalling yards. But now it enhances the CBD. It's like a well-maintained garden, how it helps lift and enhance a suburban home. This park is open to all Novocastrians. It attracts tourists, it provides spacious leisure area close to the city beaches and other popular destinations. And its striking location has been favourably compared with Sydney's Royal Botanic Gardens, as both parks are located on harbour foreshores and at the edges of their respective CBDs. However, as you know, in recent years, the Foreshore Park has suffered some major encroachments that have reduced the overall park size and the number of trees. And this has eroded the park's natural beauty and its public amenity. Incorporating the Boat Harbour car park and the rail corridor allotment into the Harbour Foreshore Park would be of much greater benefit to more Newcastle residents than allowing yet another concrete and glass building to further wall off the harbour foreshore. The proposed rezoning of the Boat Harbour car park as a multi-purpose community space could potentially allow for a hotel or a motel to be constructed there. Yet Greater Newcastle, which is a large sprawling city, unusually has relatively few major parks. And NICRA believes that council should see the Boat Harbour car park and the adjacent rail corridor land as an opportunity to help recover some of the lost Foreshore Park area. Therefore, NICRA urges councillors to reject the planned 5-storey height limit proposed for the two sites, because in the long term, the land in question is more valuable to the citizens of Newcastle as an extension to the very popular Newcastle Foreshore Park. The two allotments could easily be incorporated into the park, and NICRA sees this as a golden opportunity that should be grasped, or it will be lost forever. Now, the second option is short-term. Rezoning adversely impacts city businesses and visitors. And the car park, while it generates revenue for council, is arguably more necessary for inner city businesses already under economic stress in the area. Reducing the car park options available to customers and clients of these city businesses has a huge impact on the viability of the CBD economy. Many Newcastle citizens have seen firsthand how the revitalisation of Newcastle has failed the CBD by stalling retail and business recovery and diminishing the area's economic importance. The closure of the Boat Harbour car park would represent a loss of 40 public off-street car spaces. Now that's significant when added to the wholesale removal of hundreds of inner-city off-street car spaces in recent years, including the David Jones car park in 2017 with a loss of approximately 350 parking spaces. And April this year saw the closure of the council's King Street car space with approximately 400 spaces gone. And we know that more than 300 car parking spaces were lost to the installation of the light rail in Hunter and Scott Streets. So that's over 1,000 parking spaces gone in inner city Newcastle, which is a folly for council to contemplate closing another car parking space where Novocastrians cannot realistically turn to public transport as a viable alternative. NICRA says to Newcastle City Council that you must acknowledge a sad reality. There is no comprehensive or efficient public transport system operating in Newcastle across its spread out suburbs. NICRA believes until there is such a transport network that connects people with the things they want to do when they wish to do them, most people will continue relying upon their cars to travel to work, to drop children off at school on Saturday mornings, at school or at Saturday morning sport, to go shopping at local supermarkets and visit relatives in distant suburbs, and take the family to the beach or go out in the evenings. Regrettably, cars will continue to be the most popular form of transport in Newcastle for years to come, as there's no realistic alternative in sight. Anyone who argues otherwise simply does not use public transport. NICRA therefore urges Council of Newcastle to prioritise the development of a comprehensive car parking strategy for the future of the city. Until this strategy is available, which addresses the really desperate problem of too few car spaces, councillors should reject the current rezoning proposal, because the loss of more car parking spaces will adversely impact more city businesses and visitors to the Harbour foreshore. So in summary, NICRA urges councillors to incorporate in the long term these two allotments into the Newcastle Foreshore Park, but in the short term to keep the Harbour Park and to make sure that these parcels of land are not lost to a rezoning. I'll conclude my talk there. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Brian. I will hand over to our Senior Urban Planner, Patricia McCarthy, as well as her colleague, Daniel.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Good evening, and good evening, councillors. And hello, Brian. Nice to see you again.
Thank you.
Will we have our presentation? Thank you. So my presentation tonight is really just going to cover a little bit of the history of these two sites. So why parcel 12 was deferred from the original rail corridor rezoning, and why the Boat Harbour car park is now included in a planning proposal for rezoning. So next slide, please. So the site is outlined in that black dotted line. It fronts Scott Street and Wharf Road. It's down the end of Perkins Street, and the building that you see to the east is Harry's Cafe de Wheels, yes. So next slide. Oh, yeah, so parcel 12 is the front part there, and another click, please. And that's the Boat Harbour car park. So those are the two sites that are making up the side of the planning proposal. So next slide now, thank you. And this slide, when the state government, it was Urban Growth at the time, first submitted the proposal, their proposal to rezone the rail corridor, they divided it up into a number of lots or parcels, and they showed the intended future use for each parcel and the planning controls for each one, the building heights and zonings. And there were about 18 parcels originally submitted, and we're focused tonight on parcel 12. And parcel 12 is the block that's showing 50 dwellings, with the arrow pointing for 50 dwellings, and it'd be parcel 14 that's showing the 70 dwellings. So when the state government originally submitted the proposal, it was intended that these sites would be used for, be zoned for B4 mixed use and be used for residential purposes. Next slide. So that was the zoning map that was intended with the original proposal. And you can see the black dashed line, which shows where parcel 12 is. So that parcel was going to be B4 along with the parcel to the east. Parcel 14 was also B4. So next slide, please. So council didn't accept that planning proposal, and it was recommended instead that parcel 14 be RE1, public open space, and part of parcel 12 have an SP3 tourist zone, which would sort of bookend the site from the former train station, which was going to the SP3 tourist zone. And it was thought that it could activate this end of the entertainment precinct that was suggested at the time. So council's planning proposal at this time, it didn't include the Boat Harbour car park. It was just, we were only concerned with the rail corridor land. So next slide, please. So the Department of Planning didn't agree with council's planning proposal, and the planning proposal that was gazetted deferred parcel 12. So the zoning of parcel 12 is still SP2 railway infrastructure. And in the reasons that the department gave for doing this, they said that council should consider including its Boat Harbour car park in with parcel 12 so that it could have a more substantial development site and have perhaps achieve a better outcome in future development. And that's not actually the first time. That was raised a couple of times by different people during the exhibition and consultation of the planning proposal, and including by the Urban Design Consultative Group. And could I have the next slide, please? So what the Urban Design Consultative Group and others pointed out was that if you looked at parcel 12 on its own, development would have to take the building footprint would be in an east-west alignment. So where the red blocks are, they're showing building envelopes. A building would have to go along that way. But if you included parcel 12, you'd be able to align a building north-south. And that would allow for better connections and the view corridors between the city and the harbour, which was what we were attempting to achieve. So next slide, please. So, and that's what this planning proposal reflects. So the planning proposal, the site is both sites, parcel 12 and the corridor. Next slide. And the planning proposal is to rezone the car park from RE1 public recreation and the rail corridor from SP2 railway infrastructure to the SP3 tourist zone. It's proposing a 14-metre height rather than the 17 metres that was originally proposed, and a floor space ratio of 2:1. But the sites at the moment don't have any building height or floor space ratio, so these will be new planning controls. The car park also has a 40-hectare minimum lot size requirement, which will be removed. The site is well below 40 hectares as it is. The planning proposal also intends to have the site included as a key site under the local environmental plan, which means that the design excellence clauses of the LEP will apply to any future development of the site. And the proposal includes the reclassification of the car park from community land to operational land. Parcel 12 is operational land at the, currently. And the proposal also includes a site-specific DCP, which designates the view corridors and outlines where buildings should be sited to maintain public access across the site and those connections. Next slide, please. So that's the current zoning map. It's showing the SP2 and RE1 of the car park. Next slide. And the proposal is to have both sites SP3, as shown in the dotted black line. Next slide. So the planning proposal was on public exhibition for 28 days through February, and we received 4 submissions. One of the submissions was a petition which had 119 signatures. We had a public hearing. We delayed the public hearing until August, and we were able to have a face-to-face one at City Hall. 4 attendees, 4 people came, and there was a written submission. There were concerns raised, as outlined very well by Brian earlier, that while he was representing NIGRO, it was also shared, the concerns were also shared by many of the people who attended the public hearing. Next slide. So the key issues raised were the loss of car parking. The loss of that car park was raised as a serious concern by people who attended and in submissions. And it was also said that, you know, in the longer term, the site should stay public open space, RE1 public open space, and not be converted to a tourism zone. And there was concerns raised about that, saying that it could be used for a multi-purpose community space wasn't very specific, and what could that be? And that any development of this site would lose that current open connection between the city and the harbour. And in the longer term, the site should be retained as an open space site. And there was also some concerns raised that this planning proposal there hadn't been sufficient consultation around the planning proposal. The next slide. So it came up a fair bit that if there's no specific use for the site right now, then why would you, don't rezone it now, just leave it the way it is. And when you know what you want to do, then you can come back and do the rezoning. But there's a couple of reasons why the rezoning could proceed now. And one is that parcel 12 has transferred to us now from HCCDC, and it has transferred as operational land. And it's not rail infrastructure, and it's not going to be in future. So it just isn't appropriate to leave that in that zoning. And there's good reason, I think, to flag the future and intended use of the site. And it is intended to be the some kind of community use there, which can bookend the site, which can activate that area. And I think that it's okay to, without having a specific use now, to flag that these are the kind of uses that could go there in future, so that it's clear to everyone what's intended. Next slide. So future uses it is intended that it will be a community focus. I'm advised that in the short to medium term, it will remain as a car park, and that it's intended that the car park will be expanded over parcel 12. And in the longer term, when a community use is determined for the site, there will be further consultation with the community. It would be subject to a development application. It would be subject to the key site design excellent provisions. So the DCP also includes some protections for how developments will be sited and designed on the site. So I think that that's all for me now. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Did Daniel want to add to the presentation at this point? Or
No, Dan will help us out with questions if need be.
Wonderful, thank you. Thank you then to yourself and to Brian for your presentations to us this evening. I will open up questions to councillors, but in doing so, I thought it, given that I was here in this chair or a similar chair in a different location during this time, I thought it's probably pertinent to mention that it was the very strong will of the council in difficult circumstances to ensure that several additional parcels along the Harbour foreshore were added as RE1 public recreation to the foreshore park. And it should be noted that the foreshore park is actually expanded in size. Thank you to the decisions of those councils, that council, and just acknowledge some of the councillors here this evening that ensured that the foreshore park was expanded, and some of those lots that were originally proposed for B4 development, which was essentially residential development, were actually zoned RE1 public recreation. And I think that's a really important achievement from the City of Newcastle in the process of the rail corridor rezoning. I also note that the discussions we had at the time, both with urban growth and the community, which were very extensive, were around ensuring that the city was a place where people were attracted to and was activated, and that the SP3 zoning not only protected the heritage of the station, but also didn't allow any essential residential development on those sites that are special purpose zonings. And the intention with an SP3 zoning to bookend the station site adjacent to where we'd ensure the rail corridor was now parkland was an SP3 zoning would ensure that anything in the future that was built on the site would be for the benefit of the city and the community, and it would not allow just residential development on that site, hence the SP3 zoning. And just to be clear, I think it's really important to note that Council's intention at this point in time is to ensure that the Boat Harbour car park remains a car park and operational as a car park. And I wouldn't like to pretend to the community that somehow that car park was going to be turned back into parkland by zoning it RE1 public recreation, because our intention is actually to retain that in the short to medium term, definitely for car parking. But I would also want to be really clear to the community and say that if in the future we have the opportunity for a cultural centre, a significant cultural facility, whether it's museums, art galleries and the like, that this would be an ideal location in the city centre that could actually take up that opportunity. But it can't take up that opportunity if only half of the site is zoned in the appropriate manner. And to be fair to the council in 2016, they already had this, quite well thought out vision that went through quite a long consultation process with the community to ensure that SP3 zoning would bookend the station zoning site. And we were very clear and open and transparent with those decisions back in 2016. And I feel revisiting this now is important, and we need to go through the process. But I don't think the intention of this council should necessarily change. And I thought it would be worthwhile making sure the councillors that are on this council understood the process that we went through with the previous council to get to this point. Are there any questions, councillors? Councillor Clausen.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you for your comments too about the previous decisions of council and ensuring that the parkland was expanded. It was a good reminder, actually, seeing the slides from Paddy showing the previous vision, or the original government's vision for that section of Newcastle. It would have looked awfully different had buildings been constructed in the areas that they had originally made mention of. There was a comment made in Mr. Ladd's presentation. I just wanted to pick back on with a question through to Paddy. Mr. Ladd mentioned that SP3 tourist zoning might potentially see a hotel constructed on that site. My understanding is that isn't a permissible use in SP3 tourist zones. I just wanted to confirm, perhaps Paddy could just clarify the possible uses of the zone. I know a car park is permissible, and obviously the immediate intended use, but just to confirm what are the other things that might come up, not a hotel.
You can take that question now, Paddy, or you can provide a memo with all of the options that are allowed in SP3 tourist zoning. But I'd be very surprised if you couldn't in a normal SP3 zoning. That would be sort of counterintuitive to the very nature of the zoning in and itself. But the zoning really is to make sure that it is a facility, and the report and the presentation to us is their intention is really around a community facility, and that's in the long term, and that will have to go through a consultative process. What we need to ensure now is that the site and the lots are consolidated, and it's my understanding, and it was done with the resolution of this council, that land and parcel 12 was purchased not only to consolidate and allow parking to continue at the Boat Harbour car park in the short to medium term, but it was predominantly to ensure the cycleway connectivity east-west in the city centre, which was the main driver of the council's decision to purchase that land and ensure that we could actually consolidate those lots to provide that multimodal transport mix in the city. But I can put it through Ms. Visson and also to Paddy, but we might need a full list of what's allowable in SP3 zonings.
Yes, I can take it a little bit and then confirm through a memo. There aren't a lot of permissible uses in the tourist zone. They are primarily around recreational type uses, but tourist and visitor accommodation is permissible, community facilities are permissible, car parks are permissible, and most of the other uses are around recreational type uses. So I can follow that up with the exact list in a councillor memo.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions, councillors? I'll just check if there's any questions for councillors on Zoom. I can't see any questions. Are there any questions for councillors here? If there are no further questions, I'd just like to thank Mr. Ladd as well as Patricia and Daniel for your time this evening. It's very much appreciated, and all of the issues that were raised tonight as well as the submissions should be reported back to council. So thank you very much. That actually ends our Public Voice Committee meeting at 6 minutes past 7. What I will do, councillors, is just as this meeting is ending, I will look to open up our Development Application Committee meeting at 6 minutes past 7. And I'll just remind councillors that our Development Application Committee meeting this evening is being webcast and held in the City of Newcastle chambers at 12 Stewart Avenue, as well as remotely via Zoom. And note that, as with all meetings, this meeting is live streamed and accessible on Council's website. And I'll just ask for a resolution of Council for apologies and leave of absence from Councillor Church, Rufo and Dunn. Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie. Seconded, Councillor Winnie Bartz. All those in favour, please raise your hand. All those against, I declare that motion carried. Councillors, do I have any declarations of pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest? Councillor Clausen.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm going to declare a less than significant non-pecuniary interest in item number 40. It's the same interest I declared when this came to a public voice meeting. There was a petition that was tabled as part of one of the submissions. It included a signature from the state member for Wallsend. So I'm just declaring a political interest based on her advocacy as a petitioner.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further declarations? In doing so, I will also declare actually a pecuniary interest in item 40. It's come to my attention that one of the proponents that I would have a pecuniary interest with them. So I will leave the room and allow the Deputy Lord Mayor to take the chair at that time. Before doing so, I'll just make sure there's no more declarations. I'll just check online and I'll move on to the first item, which is a confirmation of the previous minutes from the DAC meeting dated the 20th of October. Moved by Councillor Mackenzie, seconded Councillor Byrne. All those in favour, please raise your hand. All those against, I declare that motion carried unanimously. And in doing so, for item 40, I will hand over to the Deputy Lord Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Councillors, the item before us is DA 2019/01334 for 5 Erina Place, Northampton. Do I have a mover of the officer's recommendation? Councillor Duncan. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Mackenzie. Councillor Duncan, would you like to speak to the motion? Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. I'm very happy to support this one. I can understand the community concerns in relation to the original proposal, which had called for three buildings on the site, and I think the changes in between that initial proposal and the subsequent one have really addressed all of those community concerns, notwithstanding sort of the impacts associated with the view loss. I recognise that can be a difficult thing for neighbours, but given the context of the design, the effort that the proponent has made to conform in all parts with the DCP, a design which is quite sensitive to the surrounding area, I have no hesitation in supporting this DA. Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any further speakers? Check on Zoom. No, I'll speak very briefly also in favour of the development and in understanding the concerns that were raised by members of the community in Northampton. It is very pleasing that Northampton is such a desirable suburb to live in, and there are quite a number of views about trying to maintain that. Particularly pleased the popularity of the Northampton Dog Park that was cited in quite a number of submissions that were received. But in seriousness, this is a proposal I'm glad that we had the opportunity to consider through the public voice process and have considered as at DAC. The officer's report is quite comprehensive, as Councillor Mackenzie mentioned. It runs through each of the relevant planning controls that exist for this site and demonstrates how the proposal before us, which, as Councillor Mackenzie noted, is a significant reduction on the original proposal for this site. There was originally 3 dwellings proposed, that's been reduced to 2. It is entirely compliant with all of our controls. Of course, development in some of our older suburbs like Northampton does come with challenges, and I appreciate that this might be challenging for a number of residents in the local area, but it is a good outcome overall for the city. It is compliant, and so I'm going to be voting in favour of the proposal. Councillor Duncan, would you like your right of reply? No. Councillors, I'll take the vote by division. Just make sure that nobody on Zoom wanted to speak. No. Councillors, I'll take the vote by division. All those in favour, please stand. Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Luke, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Winnie Bartz, Councillor Duncan, Councillor White, Councillor Clausen. Councillor Elliott and Councillor Robinson. Councillors, as there's no votes against, I'll declare the item carried unanimously, and in doing so, I will close the Development Applications Committee meeting. For those joining us on Zoom, please stick around. There's workshops to follow. Thank you.